Let's talk about damage.
Hi, I'm Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. How y'all doing? I'm joined today with my friend John. We just had an epic, weird, crazy battle of 40k of Necrons versus Votann, and we've learned quite a bit on just battling and some of the weird mechanics that happen. And one of the things we wanted to talk about today is damage, because it seems like damage in the game of 40k is drastically bizarre at times, and then sometimes makes a lot of sense. And some of it's also, as a Necron player personally, I have a faction that is the very, like, its codex is from the very beginning of 9th edition, and you have a codex that literally was changed as it came out, but it is brand spanking new, like 2 months old now.
Yeah, about three.
About three?
On four.
Okay. So not very much age there, right? But let's just go through and talk a little bit about damage, characteristics, and the things that we have here. We've got some of our painted models to show off, but we're going to have to scoot them back just a little bit to look at some statistics. So, John, why don't you get out Votann, and let's look at some damage characteristics. I'll get some Necron stuff ready to go. And we might just have to go to... Is there a weapons page that has all the weapons?
Yeah.
There it is, yeah. So you should have an entire page. So let's get this up right here, and we'll talk through each of these things. So typically, what is your main melee weapon on your melee? What are they called?
Chthonian Berserks.
Chthonian Berserkers. Okay, what do they use typically? You've got two weapons I know that you use on them.
Most of them use the Plasma Axe.
Okay,
and then
Plasma.
You get two different profiles with that. I think that's what it is.
Plasma Axe here.
And then there's like Twin Concussion Gauntlet down here.
Twin Concussion Gauntlet right here.
And that's like one guy can get that.
So one thing to note is there's not a lot of damage on the Plasma Axe, but minus 3 AP is really, really big. It's only 1 damage, but minus 3 AP means that damage is actually going to go through consistently. And
heavy Plasma Axe.
Oh, heavy Plasma Axe.
Because I knew it had two profiles. I was like, why am I not seeing it?
Okay. Well, and that's even bigger difference because you get to make 2 hit rolls instead of 1. Does this cost extra points to put on a heavy instead of a Plasma Axe?
No, heavy's the standard.
For who?
For the Chthonian Berserks.
Okay.
Because they're only melee, and then they have an option for like a grenade launcher. But
does this cost extra points to put on?
No, that's like what they start with. The
this
extra
is.
points is down here.
What's this one?
Plasma Axe.
Who gets those?
I think the Thins, the squad leaders, you can give it to them. I don't usually. But...
Gotcha. So let's just look through this. Like, heavy Plasma Axe is even more devastating because it's minus 3 AP on both of these, plus 1 strength on the top here, and 2 damage. Or you can go with the smaller one, same AP and 1 extra damage. Which one would you choose typically? I mean, honestly, I would go with the second option, just because you lose no AP, and normally with Necrons, we'll show you here in just a second, you lose AP whenever you go with this option. So if you want to hold that for a second, John, let's look at Necron stuff, because damage has kind of changed a bit, and honestly, it's like, sometimes I feel damage in Necrons needs to be greater, but it's also, I'm a shooty faction, and then sometimes you can get some crazy awesome stuff on melee. So I just used actually the Canoptic Wraiths, and so they've got 2 weapons that you can take. Where is it? Oh, there's more over here. That's why. Whip coils, and I can't ever remember what the other is. So I used the other one actually. Hang on, we gotta look. I forgot. I have not played them before this game. So, Vicious Claws. Whip coils are Vicious Claws. So, they should be right here. Okay. So, Vicious Claws, 2 strength up, minus 2 AP, 2 damage. So, mine do more damage than yours, but I have 1 less AP, which means it's not as reliable of damage. Whip coils are minus 1 AP only. Minus 1. 1 damage. Each time an attack is made with a weapon, preferably make 2 hit rolls instead of 1. And my weapon skill to hit with those is a 4+. So damage consistency-wise is not very good. These are 35 points for these just with one of these weapons. How many points are your axe guys?
30 points with the axes, and I think it was like 40 if you take the Concussion Gauntlet. I think it's an extra
10 on that person.
Yeah.
So bare minimum, they're 30 points. They're 5 points cheaper than Canoptic Wraith. They hit more consistently. They have higher AP and potentially just as much damage on their profiles. I guess the first thing I notice immediately then is a little bit of power creep. But we also saw in our game we just had where things...
By power creep?
Power creep in the sense of yours have more damage potential. So let's look through here of you have your axe, right? Let's grab it back up here real quick. Let's look through it. You'll have to bring it over here. So the axe, the heavy plasma axe right here.
Okay.
+1, -3, 2 damage. So for the exact same amount of attacks, because how many attacks does your guys get to make with that? 3. So actually mine get to do 4, and they're 4+. They're 5 points more expensive. Yours have one more AP. Mine has 1 more strength. Yours do 2 damage. Mine do 2 damage.
Mm-hmm.
So yours can go through more consistently with the -3 AP. And my -2 actually against void armor is -1. So it's kind of an interesting thing that you're paying for a character with 30 points that only gets 3 attacks with this, but you hit on a 3-up?
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas my guys only hit on a 4-up starting. And so it just feels like they're if they're not careful, they're giving a little bit more damage in places. And what we did see in our last game though was I saved out of a lot of them, which was kind of weird, and then struck back and wrecked the whole squad.
Right, because you guys have an invuln save and mine don't. They have
Yeah.
a 5-up.
And that's
the normal 6-up save. So the second there's any AP, you immediately go to the 5-up.
Yeah, and so that's the change here. And so you've also got, a faction-specific thing that you could have given an invuln save?
On that one, it would have had a 5-up invuln.
Which is way better than their regular save. But
Right.
That's interesting that they don't have that. So some of their point value obviously is tied into other things. But this weapon profile I would rather take than mine. But it's also you get 1 less attack. But if you can kill something pretty consistently, it's going to be pretty devastating. What we saw, though, was just the luck of saves going no. And this profile by itself is just really strong. It's good. And then Twin Concussion Gauntlet. Let's go further up right there. Further, yeah. There we go. You get to make 1 additional attack with this weapon. So you have a lot of attacks coming in with this thing. And it's 1 less AP, but the strength means it's going to hit pretty consistently.
Strength would be strength 8.
Yeah. So overall, that's a pretty impressive upgrade. You do lose the AP, but there's got to be a lot more hits coming in. So probably the damage is actually going to be more consistent. So any thoughts there?
I don't know. I mean, I'd say that... What was the movement, though, on your guys?
My guys were a 12-inch movement.
Mine moved 5.
They're a
8
fast
with this.
attack.
Right.
But what are your guys technically?
5.
Well, no, but like part of your codex.
They're elites.
They're elites. And so I actually have Lich Guard, which maybe a Lich Guard would be even better. There's all my extra pages of things I've printed off. Lich Guard take one of 2 things. They take, and I don't have them either yet, and I've been proxying just to try them out because they're an interesting unit. Lich Guard, if I can find them, they take one of 2 weapons. Either A, they take an axe, a a war scythe, or hyperphase sword. So if you take a hyperphase sword, you also get a shield, which makes you have a 4+ invuln and a +1 to armor saving throws. They have the 5-inch movement as well, so they're very much identical. Point wise, in here, I don't know what they are because. Do you have your phone on you, John?
Yeah.
Can you look up on Wahapedia what the point value is of a Lich Guard now? Because it may have changed.
Yeah. I don't know how
So,
to spell that.
Lich, Lich. And then Guard, just like a normal Guard. Because normally the Lich Guards starting off were... Yep, right here, 28 points per model. It's a weird number.
It's 25.
It's 25 now?
Yeah.
Okay, so how many points are your...
My guys are 30.
So those are 5 points cheaper, which is kind of interesting to note. They only have 3 attacks, so we're very similar there.
Same amount of wounds, same strength.
Here's where everything gets bonkers weird, and I don't like it, and makes me really frustrated. AP on the sword, -3. Strength only +1, damage 1. So you actually have more damage than me and the same AP. The war scythe, though, you lose the shield, so then you're just to a regular save. 2 plus strength, -4 AP, 2 damage. So if you can get to something and hit it, it's going to be devastating. Mm-hmm. But the problem is getting there. And that is a massive, massive problem. with especially like anything that moves only 5 inches. That extra inch doesn't sound like a lot until you're trying to charge and you realize all of a sudden you're at a 10 instead of a 9, or even 8 instead of a 7.
Right.
And that matters. So even right here we're just seeing a little less damage, and that's bizarre to me. Now the War Scythe obviously is even better armor penetration than your Plasma Axe. I think the one other characteristic of yours is they can be in a transport and then jump out and start meleeing things, but that's just completely separate from them themselves.
Yeah.
So, and that's an interesting thing. So what have we seen right here with this? I'd say there's a little bit of damage increase to an extent, but it's very, very minor. But even adding 1 extra damage by itself changes everything. Now, obviously, the War Scythe it hits like a truck, but there's like 2 ways with Necrons to get your faction up into the range and survivability. And unfortunately, both those options don't have very good weapons profiles with damage characteristics either. So ironically, you pay a lot to be able to actually do the thing that you want, but yet you're also you're just in a weird spot once you do this because of what you cause. And I think that's the other thing. So one of the things you typically carry your warriors in is a transport buggy.
Yeah, the Sagittar.
So let's look at some weapon profiles there. So we'll go past melee because there's a lot of melee that we could look at, because obviously there's different things, but you also pay different prices for these, because we could also talk about the Scythe of the Nightbringer as a side note. Damage on this is bizarre because you could just do 1 damage guaranteed and you get to do double attacks, so 12 attacks, or only 6 attacks with this massive strength, massive AP with a d6 of damage. And quite frankly, I really wish on any d6s, because that's one thing I've noticed in Necron warriors, or Necrons in general, they have a lot of d6 rolls. I think a 2d3 should be the standard for any sort of damage like this, period. Just to go, okay, minimum of 2, maximum of 6, so it still has the maximum of 6, but it doesn't just go, okay, you just hit with this most epic strike ever, and you did 1 damage, so congrats, you chose this profile, and you did nothing.
Yeah, well, the only thing I would say is that I'm looking at it now, it says you can't use an invulnerable saving throw.
That's the other side
of it.
So,
I mean, I don't know if you want any guaranteed damage there other than 1.
Yeah, and that's fair.
And strength times 2.
The interesting thing is just the d6 rolls when they show up, because crackling tendrils are a thing over here. I have a lot of just d6 damage. Doomsday Blaster, Doomsday Cannon,
yeah, but
Eldritch Lance.
When I'm seeing a lot of the d6, I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them have some kind of ability that go with them.
They do some of it. These are limiters, though, actually. For this one, it's you have to remain stationary in this case. So you can't even get to this thing unless you haven't moved. So it's actually not a good thing. And blast means you can't shoot it in close combat. I think it also has to do with
it's the amount of units
in the faction. Yeah, so there is some benefit there, but again, this is that same thing. D6 roll. This has a bonus damage characteristic of the Gauss of the Heat Ray if they're within half range. So it gets D6 plus 2, so still only 3 damage as minimum. But I think D6s are a weird thing, and we'll talk about D6s because you have something of that. Actually, I think you have a 2d3 on your railgun.
2d3 plus 6.
And that right there is the very reason I would argue I think 2d3 should be standard across the board if they're going to do things like that, or they should take it out in some way or limit it, because that's a massive jump in damage. And anyway, having a gun that can do 2d3s plus 6, so guaranteed minimum it is 8 damage, maximum of 12. So it can shift, obviously, but that's a big difference from a d6 weapon that's 1 damage to 6 versus guaranteed 8 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
So Spear of the Void Dragon, that's ironic. And again, like Tachyon Arrow, a once per game thing that you can only use once. D6 damage. So if you make it through,
120 inches.
it's a one shot.
Right.
It's a one-time thing. 12 attack, minus 5 AP, D6 damage. It's meant to be this one-time cool little epic shot.
Yeah.
You can't shoot characters.
120, that's like 2 game boards. And
that's the point of it. It's meant to be stick hand up in air, shoot it, gone.
Yeah, so, but imagine how pissed people would get if, like, you were guaranteed 2 or 3 damage or whatever to, like...
Well, and that's why I'm saying just a 2d3, because it still only limits you to minimum of 2, but it doesn't go any higher onto the 6 damage. Like, it stays at 2 to 6.
I think with stuff like that, where you're getting a pot shot at the beginning and there's, like, no... Other than being completely, like, obscured or whatever...
It's actually one of the worst weapon profiles in the entire game.
Right.
Because of this. If your person you're playing against has any thought at all, they're going to block their characters. So this still has the Lookout Sir rule put in place, so it can't actually target anything. You might be able to target a vehicle, and how awful that is that you did this epic awesome arrow and it does 1 damage and pings off the armor. So what did you actually accomplish? The answer was nothing. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, because if you take this, you have to take off the Resurrection Orb as an option. And this costs points to play. Mm-hmm. And how frustrating would it be to hit something and then they invuln save it? That's the other thing. There's invuln saves. So this, not only does it have a bad damage profile, but I think even with the 2d3s, it would at least make it slightly enticing, but it's still not very valuable. Just because it's that one time, boom, done. If it had maybe minus 6 AP, that would go it, but it's the invuln saves that just hurt it.
Yeah, I don't see you getting a damage like that just because, like, strength 12 minus 5 AP, like, if it does hit, there's no way to get out of that other than invulns or whatever. But
well, and that's the reality is nowadays there's so much stuff that has invulns that not only is the damage a weird issue in the game, but then invulns have an issue as well, because they're just prevalent everywhere. Like, we just literally had a game where you didn't target my Canoptic or my Necron Warriors because they had invuln from Chronomancer the whole game.
Yeah.
He was just sitting with them. And so you just didn't target them because you're like, I don't want to roll against that. And the reality is most factions nowadays have the ability to have an invuln somewhere. So anyway, let's look at your Sagittar and let's talk through that for damage. And then we'll look at the Magna Rail. So that's fine.
Slam it down.
Okay, so you have quite a few weapons. What weapons were you carrying in our game?
The autocannon, mortar, and then the twin bolt cannon.
So autocannon, matter autocannon, the twin bolt cannon,
yep,
and what else?
That's it.
Okay, that's it. So you didn't take these other things. Are they extra damage?
Well, if you take the other thing, you would, like, lose the autocannon. And
yeah, and see, even right here, I would argue, should these be a D6? I would still say 2 D3s. Because this is so frustrating that, again, focused blast, you get one shot at this epic profile, which is kind of a lame AP with D6 damage. Why? Like, you obviously hit them with a missile.
Yeah.
There should be a little extra damage there. And so why didn't you take this thing?
Well, I think it costs extra points, but I just don't. The way I use it, I try to use it for anti-infantry. Okay. So I just take the stuff that's going to give me the most shots.
So you're taking
12.
Do these cost extra on the vehicle?
No, it starts with, I think that's what it says down here.
Okay.
Somewhere. Never mind. It starts with the beam cannon.
The beam cannon.
You just switch it out.
That beam cannon is kind of nasty, but again, D6 damage. I think one of the things we talked about was vehicles should really have some sort of thing where they take a maximum of so much damage per phase or something, or so much damage per hit,
like a -1 or something like that.
More like you can only take 4 or 5 damage per hit, something like that.
Like what does that say though? Are you saying like in a phase or in a single attack volley?
In a single attack volley.
Okay, so if you pump 50 shots into my land fortress,
or even just from each weapon. So that's right now there is nothing.
I think that gets a little too hard to track though, because you got to remember your entire shooting phase.
No, not your entire shooting phase, because that's a good observation. Like, say in the first shooting phase, I'm going with my Locust Heavy Destroyers, and I have 3 of them.
Okay.
And I fire at you, and so each gun can only do a maximum to you of 4 damage. Let's say, that's what it would do. So every time a gun hits you, it only can do a maximum of so much damage. So these big crazy guns that we'll see here in a little bit that do 8 to 12, like the railgun,
Right.
could limit to certain extents for vehicles.
Yeah.
Just because then the vehicle actually could keep going, and it would be a benefit to across the board for everybody. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the idea is that anything can kill anything, and then you start doing that, and there's probably some factions that just don't handle vehicles very well.
I mean,
so it's like at that point you would put them. But I get what you're saying, but I
they'd
don't
still
know
be able
if
to
you,
do the 4 damage per hit or
I
something.
would say you just reduce the amount of damage that goes in.
Well, see, we have some characters and like dreadnoughts and things that do that. Some of the Grey Knights pieces have that characteristic. It's very frustrating because it's like
This guy's got it too. He's
got
minus 1 damage to a minimum of 1, which is pretty big.
yeah, and that's it's frustrating because it's like, okay, all of a sudden the best option is to hit this thing with lots of 1 damage things because it can't reduce it. He just has to take 1 damage.
Yeah.
But it's funny because then a 2 damage thing becomes the 1 damage like everything else. That's pinging at him with 1 damage, which is kind of funny.
So I guess it was. So if we did it theoretically, whatever, you're like minus 4 damage or maximum of 4 damage taken from 1 squad at a time, and
Yeah.
I think it would be, when you say it like that, it's like, what's the point of taking like a big heavy anti-tank weapon if not all the damage is going to go through it? It would almost.
I think it would be a patch to fix Games Workshop's issues that they put in place where they just make profiles that are so massive that don't really make the game interesting when you could survive a hit, maybe. Like, so example, your railgun that we'll look at here in a second can literally one-shot a Doom Scythe if it rolls well.
Right.
It can just one-shot it. And it's like, that means I didn't even get a chance to reciprocate.
Well, I think I get what you're saying. I think that's a bigger aircraft problem, which has seemingly been kind of put together with that, but that's also an entire turn where I got to take that damage and put it into something else other than like maybe like Nightbringer or Silent King or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's something to remember.
It is.
It's like, yeah, it sucks against vehicles, but we also saw that you did like 5 damage, whatever. You did a bunch of other damage to it.
It was mortal wound stuff from Nightbringer.
Right. So it's the damage sucks, and it sucks that the aircraft would get blasted off the board, but that also
and I dare say
you another turn like somewhere else.
I dare say maybe that the Nightbringer, when he did that crazy thing, maybe should have had a limit to how many mortal wounds.
That's what I think. Well, what sucks is with that, like, off tangent to kind of what we're talking about, but like there's no, like, I feel like there's just not a cap.
No.
Like, you're just able to keep using those abilities, and you don't, I don't know, it feels like it's easy to get them, but at the same time he's like almost,
he's 320 points, I believe.
But like,
he's expensive, and his range is very limited because he's melee himself, and then the best you can do, I think, is 24 inches for his other stuff, but the Gaze of Death is what I hit you with 9-inch range.
Stuff like that, it's like, what am I supposed to do when you just drop 11 mortal wounds? And I know a lot of those were lucky, but like the fact that was plausible, and it was
a lot of lucky rolls, but it is the fact that it's plausible is insane.
I think that's an issue in itself, that like a lot of some of the Necron stuff, that like you get on and watch some of the like Chaos tournaments and stuff like that, and they're just like Thousand Suns, particularly in some of the Black Legion, and they're just like cranking out mortal wounds, and it's like, I mean, when you get up that high, people probably got something to counter it. But like in just casual gameplay, I think.
Well, there's not a whole lot of counters to mortal wounds other than like the.
I'm talking about.
Is it Feel No Pain?
I think it depends on how it's worded. Like,
okay, but there is something with Custodes that they can ignore mortal wounds.
Yeah, so there's Custodes. It's their faction ability for like most infantry. It's on a 6-up. You don't take any mortal wound damage, but if you take the Emperor's chosen shield host, then it's a 4-up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those have been hard to put down. And it's like, I think they have to introduce stuff like that because they've got a damage problem at times, because there's so many ways to throw out damage. And
I think when it comes to mortal wounds, there should be some kind of like, I don't know. My I didn't grab him. The Unthor that I was playing, like his sword does mortal wounds, and I was like, I don't think that really makes sense. I think mortal wounds should be stuck to vehicle explosions and like magic or whatever you'd want to classify as like magic in the game. And I think that could be a huge step. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because as a Necron player, the one way I get mortal wounds separate from normal, like psychic or anything like that, because obviously we don't have psychic, but we have the Nightbringers, the Catan shards that do something similar.
This guy's psychic.
Yeah, you have psychic, but Necron's just we don't directly. We have a pseudo psychic, and the only two ways typically we do a lot of mortal wounds is through two stratagems: the Mefrit stratagem, and I may be forgetting other ones, where every unmodified 6 wound roll can become a mortal wound in addition.
Yeah,
and it's almost like saying you're firing so heavily that it's going through the armor. That's the one time they can do it with that, and you have to spend a CP. And then Malevolent Arcing with the Teslas, and I think it's within 6 inches, they take on a 4-up a mortal wound from the target being hit by a Tesla weapon, almost as though it's saying the weapon is arcing to other things and burning into them. Is gaining power, I guess.
Even then, I don't know. I don't think that makes sense. I think that they should just stick to mortal wounds being like non-physical kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Erythral abilities, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I understand Nightbringer just because like they're gods locked in.
Well, his is psychic, essentially, is what he's doing.
Right. I'm just saying for like the character profile, like I'd understand that he'd have like abilities like that, but the fact that he had the ability to do 11, that would have wiped an entire Hearthstone warrior squad, and then it's like that's 140 points with all things taken.
I was shocked when he did that, because normally he's lucky to get 4 to 5 at most, and then that turn he was pumping out mortal wounds. Now I did spend a CP to do the extra. Did that work? The extra ability?
Well, I think you had to, because that was the only way you paid for it.
Right? Well, no, but I'm saying like, did that third use of Catan power?
It did something, because it was later. Like he took 3, and I was like, okay, whatever, and then he took another 3, and then it's like he was down to whatever it was, 1 wound, and I had to pull out a bunch of different saves to and I almost made it out, but
yeah, he was putting in some work. So let's talk about this for just a second here. You have a 36-inch range, Hunter 6, so that's just a normal gun. 6 strength, -2 AP, 2 damage, and then 24 inches, heavy 6, 7, -2, 2. Let's see if Necrons have anything that competes with that in any way, because I don't know if we do. No idea. So let's see what the Necron warriors have. Ranged weapons. So we're looking first for a 36-inch weapon. There's a 36-inch.
-4 for 6 damage.
Yeah, it's 6 damage. Annihilator. Oh, that's from the Silent King's guns. Heavy 1 shot. So this doesn't really translate at all. So we need to keep looking. Heavy D6. Does that translate in any way? D3 damage, random damage. 8 strength, -2 AP. That's similar, but the heavy D6 and random damage doesn't help us. Assault D3, random damage. Eldritch Lance, who's got that? Random attacks, random damage. Doesn't really help us. So it could be way more devastating than yours, but we don't know. That's so frustrating. I hate seeing stuff like this because it's so aggravatingly silly. Heavy Death Ray, 36-inch, 3 shots. D3 plus 3. So that's actually a consistent number. 4 minimum, 6 tops. I like something like that because it's actually useful, but it still doesn't compare. 36-inch Particle Whip. 36-inch Particle Whip? A whip with 36 inches?
Yeah, that's...
What? Bad. What is this? Heavy D6. Again, random.
Well, I think that makes
strong
sense for a whip.
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering who has this. I'm going to have to look it up later because that's weird. And again, so right now, damage profiles make no sense. I have so far found nothing that equals in any way your gun. Heavy 1. Doesn't do anything. Where's all my 6-shot guns?
Well, I think
look. Go ahead.
I was just, like, a lot of those, though, there's not a lot of single-shot stuff. I mean, there obviously is, but, like, looking at a lot of your stuff right now, and there's some more expensive stuff that's has some good damage. It's one shot, but like across the board, you take way more shots than I do in a lot of areas. It seems like with a lot of different profiles. I think that's something to keep in mind. On top of, I think it's gonna be hard to justify guaranteed damage with a faction that a lot of units have the ability to. Some of them not only have an invuln, but then also have the ability to resurrect. I mean, it's not guaranteed, but it's like, I mean, a lot of times it's a 5-up.
It's another thing for sure. It's just I don't have much of these 6 guaranteed shots. There's very few times in here.
Yeah, and
actually, there's one time.
And I don't know, Votan might not be the best comparison. I know. For now, I mean, obviously, it's a new
those are heavier guns, so
there's less
to compare
choice.
to.
I think there's 11 choices, period.
Yeah,
and like that is the lowest amount next to Custodes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look right here. This is probably the closest thing we can get in any way. It's a 36-inch range. It's on your Doom Scythe, Night Scythe. 10 shots, 7 strength, 0 AP, 1 damage,
and 6s.
And 6 to score maybe 2 additional hits. Yeah, exploding 6s, but. Meh.
I mean, on 10 shots, you'll get maybe 2 6s.
Yeah, that's your hope, and then it's the question of what do you miss though as well. And so I have never had much luck with these because often people just save out of it, and I'll do a damage or 2 at best, for 10 shots, because yours has a -2 AP, correct?
For what?
The heavy 36-inch range Sagittar gun.
-2 AP, yeah.
Yeah, and 2 damage. So actually, you have essentially 12 shots wrapped into 6 compared to what this is. And even more than that, really, with the AP.
But aren't there other guns on the Doom Scythe?
On the Doom Scythe, there is.
So it's like...
So the Doom Scythe has...
a 10-shot profile on just one on top of other stuff as well.
It has but that's the thing. We can't just compare each... we have to compare profiles to profiles. Because you're saying you've got 2 guns on here. And how many points is the Sagittar?
130.
Okay, Doom Scythe is 160. And it was 200. So it was crazy expensive. So it has these guns, and then it has a heavy 3 shot of the heavy death rays. And the heavy death rays are what you take it for. Because they're a profile that actually does some damage. And when they actually go through, they're impressive. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's 12 strength, -4 AP, D3 plus 3. These are the things, but we'd have to compare them to something with something equivalent. So a 36-inch range, heavy 3, this is 3 separate shots that usually at best I see 1 go through with all the invuln saving throws anymore, because this often just rolls up on an invuln saving throw and then all the AP that I have gets lost. But that's neither here nor there. I'd say invulnerability needs to be changed in some ways, but also damage profiles, because one of the issues really also is let's look at your Magna Rail, because this gun is, I think, the thing that really frustrates me with Games Workshop and their design structure, because how many points does this thing take to put on your...
It's one of the options. For 300 is the base, and then you have scanners, or you have different missiles and stuff like that.
How many points is the Magna Rail cannon?
I mean, it's just one of the options. You can swap it out. It's none. There's no points.
No extra points for this.
The 300 it costs to put it on the board.
So clearly, it's an expensive unit, right? This is Silent King levels of epic, crazy sauce stuff, but 100 points less than Silent King, right? He's 300 on base.
Yeah.
Okay. So the heavy Magna Rail gun, cannon, 36 inches, heavy 1. Okay, 1 shot. Now, where this really gets crazy, as we saw today, was you have characters that can sit behind it and also make it auto hit, essentially.
Yeah, if so, there's criteria to get there. It's got to be Uthor the Destined. He's the only named character, and you have to be greater 30 in League. And the ability is once per battle round, you can change saving throw, damage roll, hit, whatever. As long as, if it's rerollable, you can change it to a 6, and it would count towards an unmodified 6 for any rules purposes. And with the Magna Rail, if you roll a 6 on the wound roll, all the damage is dispersed throughout the entire unit.
Yeah. So we'll look further at that right there on the page 87 because that's where things get nutty. So here's the 2d3s. This is the exact thing I'm looking at and talking about. -4 AP, which is a very good AP. 2d3s plus 6. You can't, and here's where things get nutty, right? The minimum damage on this profile is 8 up to 12. 12 damage for one gun is insanity. The maximum I can hit with any weapon, I think in my codex, is 6. No, there's more than that. 3d3s, so that technically could get 9. But it's 3d3, so it could go from 3 to 9. Very random. Mm-hmm. But it still has 9 potential. Yeah, that's the highest I can go. So Magna Rails, page 87. So let's talk about Magna Rails, because I wouldn't be upset about that damage on that characteristic if it didn't have something that just made it ridiculously insane. That right there. Invuln saving throws cannot be taken against the attack. So you can hit something and they cannot save away from it. If they have an invuln saving throw, you can't use it. That's insanity. That's nuts. I don't know why they would ever introduce something like that, because it's like, here's all these invuln saving throws that we've given everything, that we make the game much more tanky, and then all of a sudden, here's a weapon that just goes, no. And don't your little guys also get these guns?
Yeah, for 20 extra points, I can give them
a sniper rifle.
Yeah, it doesn't do as much damage, but
right. But still. And then what you talked about right here, this is where things get even more nutty, and especially with that character. And obviously this is combinations, but it makes this damage value so much more useful and more beneficial when you can just go, I don't have to roll one of my rolls. All I have to do is...
you still have to roll it, but...
You have to roll the hit roll, and then you don't have to roll the wound roll, right?
Yeah.
Because essentially you go, oh, I rolled. Darn, it's a 6.
It's a 6, yeah.
The damage just keeps going. So what if you hit 12 damage? All of a sudden, even against like Silent King, I can't take invuln saving throws. Each of my Triarchal Menhirs are 5 wounds? 6. 5. You would actually kill both Triarchal Menhirs and take 2 wounds into Silent King with one shot. And with, granted, some point value invested in the setup.
Right.
But
I think you've...
How many points is that guy?
Which guy?
Unthar.
160.
160. So you're looking at 460 points to set this all up. It's 64 points as Silent King. But it has the capability of shooting him potentially on turn 1 if you can get the shot off before he can do anything. Can't make invuln saving throws, so there's nothing I can do to stop it. The AP is high enough, I think. I don't know if Silent King has enough to stop a -4. He has a 3 up, so 3 up, 4 up, 5 up, 6 up, 0. And you can put scanners on this thing. This is where I go, I wonder if damage is getting a little out of control at times. Because that just makes, here's a limiter on certain things. Because beyond this, like, you go up against dreadnoughts, you're going to be able to hit them hard. Or you go up against a squad and use that gun against a squad of heavier stuff, and you go, actually, I hit that, and it goes through into the next thing after I destroy the 9 wound model over here. That's nutty. Like, that's a lot of damage. So, thoughts, comments?
I don't know. I mean, maybe they could... I think the invuln thing makes sense. Just because of how big and how many points you have to spend on it.
Yeah. If it only had one of those, I don't know that I would be super, super upset.
Like if they took off the 6 thing?
Either one.
Yeah.
Because then, at the very least, there's potentially either a defense against it, or there's at least a...
that's what I thought. I thought the exploding 6s, the 6 thing, I think that's kind of ridiculous, but I did want to try it out because I'd seen people talking about it and I was like, that doesn't seem like a terrible combination.
Yeah.
I do think the one of the issues just in that is that you have to take the Greater Thurian League, which isn't terrible, but there's definitely, I think, better. I still think Premier Conglomerate's better just because.
And what's that one do?
That's the one you get plus 4 inches to all non-relic weapons. So it would make in theory, the railgun go up to 40 inches from 36.
So even stronger
And then
range-wise.
anything with a 2-up save that doesn't already have it gets anything with a 2-up save gets a 4-up invuln, and then anything else gets a 5-up.
So even more survivable overall.
Yeah.
And then random range stuff increases.
And then it's got some AP stuff in there, but it's all circumstantial.
And another thing that you've got here is some of your guns that you have used before. That's a very interesting damage characteristic that I wonder if they're not careful, it just really causes issues, is the beam weaponry.
Yeah.
Because that says 2 damage, but it's not 2 damage. It's actually lots and lots more potentially, right? Obviously, it's potential because beam weapons, beam.
Right.
So beam weapons just basically say you target a thing behind it, and then everything in between you also hit.
Yeah.
And deal damage to.
Well, you make a wound roll for both of them.
Oh, you do. Okay. Yeah. So, geez. So you still have to make wound rolls, but there's still that's a lot of extra damage coming in from stuff. What's really crazy to me is one of the things that I run is the Locust Heavy Destroyers, and they have a good damaging, like they're my heaviest damaging thing. But one of the most frustrating things is this. They only hit on a 3+, so I have to use something to get them up to a 2+. Granted, your vehicle also has that as well, but you can reroll a hit roll.
With the greater Thurian, you could reroll 1 hit roll or 1 wound roll.
And then after you do the hit roll, then you could go, actually, the wound roll is now a 6.
Potentially, yeah.
With the other guy. Yeah. So there's ways to set that up, but it costs things. This, I go with my big gun, strength 10, minus 4 AP, 3d3 damage. The damage is awesome. This is the best damage profile in many ways that I have. It has a minimum of 3 damage, but it has a maximum of 9, and we've seen it usually roll pretty well.
Yeah.
But often we've also seen, I will hit you, and then you'll be like, I have a 5+ or a 6+ save, and you roll a save. And it's from an invuln save or just the save still happening. And it's the most frustrating thing ever that here's this epic big gun, and then you have this other epic big gun that goes, no invuln saving throws. And nothing in the Necrons has that except for, I think, Nightbringer on his melee. And obviously Mortal Wounds just go through everything except for certain exceptions. Mm-hmm. And so these are clearly like a profile of why do people take these? Because they hit like trucks against big vehicles. They can actually decimate those things. And I would dare say this is pretty strong.
That's really, yeah. I can't. Universally, I think that unit is feared. From every time I see a vehicle or anytime I watch any video where they're fighting Necrons and they got one of those, like when they do their little unit lineups, they're like, gotta watch out for the Heavy Destroyer. That thing packs a punch or whatever. Yep.
And that's what's interesting about my codex is they're feared because they actually have a gun that works. Whereas, take for example right here, the Doomsday Arc. This thing, we've used it, I think, once ever. I brought it out as a proxy.
Ironically, it did good.
Yeah, it did well.
I've had some bad sales, but it still did good.
We were still, I don't think, even playing objectives yet. We were still trying to learn. I don't remember for sure.
Yeah, because you parked it in the back.
And just started shooting.
Yeah.
And so it can have a 72-inch range if you don't move, but you have to not move. How many shots? Well, meh. Here's the dream. You roll 6 shots with this thing. You have this epic minus 5 AP, and you roll 6 damage every time. That's the dream, right?
Naturally.
6 times 6, 36 damage, potential.
Right.
Or 1 shot, 1 damage. This literally could do 1 damage or 36 in a turn. That is the stupidest, dumbest thing.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people not happy with Doomsday Arc.
Yeah.
I think for that reason.
Because it's...
D6 for... How many points is it, I guess, started for?
Look it up really quickly because in here is going to be different than what it is now, but we can look at what it used to be. So, this is the damage profile issue. It really is. If you can see, like, why are Space Marines struggling? I think in some ways their damage profiles are pretty terrible. What is this thing called? Doomsday Arc.
It's only 160 points for
Okay.
but it's got 14 wounds. which is
190,
pretty
160 now. So we should.
good. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I don't know if there's any war gear.
No,
Um,
unfortunately not.
it's got 5 up invuln,
Yep.
and then a
1 of 3.
A wound roll of 1 to 3 always fails, which doesn't seem bad either.
No, and those are actually really cool abilities, but they're on very few things, and the things that they're typically on are not great.
Is this a dedicated transport?
No, this is not a transport at all. The transport version is called a Ghost Arc, so you buy the model and
then
convert it to which one you want.
is that in here?
Yeah.
On the next page?
Where would it be?
I don't know if it's
Right
all
here.
alphabetic. Yeah.
And it doesn't have those guns. It literally just goes down to the crap guns. This is literally the thing the Necron Warriors, they say to put them on and attach those as your normal weapons, and everybody goes, you know what, I'm attaching the other weapons that have strength 5 and AP -2 because they're actually good guns.
Yeah.
So yeah, Doomsday Arc, I love the concept of heavy D6 of shots. I'm sorry, this is stupid, right? Even if it was 2d3s, this would at least be usable. But this, I would much rather a d6, 2d3s of damage, 2d3s of shots, 2d3s of damage. That to me totally hits. It would increase the usefulness slightly. Guaranteed 2 shots.
Yeah,
Guaranteed 2 damage to 6 damage.
I would assume that the reason they do that, it's only 160 points and has 14 wounds, which is pretty crazy.
Well, they dropped it drastically because nobody's playing it because it's terribly random. You're going to have those one game where it does something epic, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have that one game where it has a turn and it dishes out 36 damage. Now, granted, 36 damage dished out, half of that's going to go nowhere, even if you pump it into a big vehicle. Because it's just, it's gone.
Strength 10, AP -5.
Yeah. But then you're going to have about every other game where it's shooting 2 or 3 shots at best. Maybe 4. And then you're rolling damage and it's plinking stuff for 2 or 3.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, okay, why can't I have a damage profile like yours? Or it ignores invuln saving throws. If that even happened, all of a sudden this becomes more useful.
Yeah. I don't know. They probably just got to be careful because sometimes your faction is ridiculously durable. So they can't overdo it with stuff like this, which is probably why it's not that good. It would, I don't know, maybe GW doesn't know what they're doing.
I don't think they do because they've introduced the fact that they've introduced where is it? Just the fact that they introduced for the Votan something that can do such damage is bizarre to me. Because I don't want a gun that can be so random. It's not fun. I want something that has a little bit of control to it, but still some randomness is fine. Again, here's another one. You have a heavy D6. You could get 1 shot out of this silly thing. Why don't you use this? Why don't you use this gun?
It just doesn't. I don't know. Oh, no, because you can get heavy 2d6 down here somewhere.
Oh.
A different one.
Oh, well,
for the same amount of points.
Oh. Well,
The abilities are different, but
it's 1 less damage,
you
but
get blast off that one.
2d6 has a maximum of 12, minimum of 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's still stupidly random. I would say this should be 4 d3s.
Yeah.
Then your minimum shots are 4. Because this is once per battle. Give this 4 d3s. That makes you way more useful. And that also means if one of your ones rolls a 1, the others can still roll other numbers. That's the other thing we haven't talked much about. Whenever you start rolling d3s, instead of a d6, the 1d6 comes up. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. You had to spend a CP to re-roll it. Or a d3 means this one over here could be a 1 or a 2, so it's a 1, but then the other one could be a 3 or 4, so it's a 2, or 5 and 6 is 3, so it still can be different.
Yeah. Because
it's a separate roll. And that you've nailed it right on the head. Like, this is better. Do you actually take this on your... Sometimes. So, Mountain Breaker Warhead. And this right here. Again, this is once per battle. Did you use this?
No, I used that.
This is crazy. But It's a one shot. It's only minus 3 AP, 6 damage. It's cool. It's a once per battle. Huh. But I would almost take that over the other things in some ways because it's going to be less random and actually potentially do way more damage. It's got a higher strength too. Weird. So what do you typically run on this thing?
The Magna Rail Cannon.
Okay.
If I don't take this, I'll take a scanner, but I've almost always take this.
Take what, the Magna Rail?
No, the Magna Rail. I always take the Magna Rail. I've been thinking about taking the...
Why can't you take the scanner?
The missile takes a scanner spot. I misworded that. I was still...
Oh, okay. So you either get the scanner or a warhead.
Yeah.
A once per game shot. And so what else do you take on this thing?
So usually it's going to be where are they at? Ion beamers right here. 2 shots. Then there's 4 of them, so 8 shots. Rail cannon, and then I'll take this warhead right here.
Wow. Okay.
And then that gets you up. The ion beamers are extra points, and then I think you get up to 330 by taking these.
And what was the other gun you took? Bolt cannon or auto?
Auto. Oh, the auto cannon's on the back. You start with that.
Okay. So it's just kind of there.
Yeah.
That is kind of funny that you can shoot it towards the front even though it's on the back. But hey.
Yeah.
So I really just think that overall Games Workshop needs to figure out some damage stuff. Armor of Contempt is apparently going away soon. And so now the damage is going to be going through even more consistently.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be some points drops for those. But apparently Leagues of Votann are getting points increases because they have a lot of guns that deal a lot of damage and AP.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily both, but they have -1 or 2 AP with 1 or 2 damage. And it feels like Necron Warriors, but with a little bit more added on. Now, Necrons, as you pointed out, this is very true. We have a survivability in a different way.
Right.
I have the resurrection stuff, the reanimation protocols. So I have a different ability that protects me survivability-wise. But unfortunately, my damage isn't very high, except for one exception that I typically play is the Locust Heavy Destroyer sitting in the back, blinking at you. Mm-hmm. And now, actually, I could run 2 of them. Because I can hide one in the Locust Destroyers and then one as a standard. But then I can't heal him. Well, I can't resurrect him once he dies.
Yeah. You
so
always throw him in the trash can too. Like
yeah. I know. What's funny is I think every time I fought against you with them though, they have shot at you
and then they miss because it's not a lot of shots.
They you get 1 shot, they miss, or you save out of it, and I'm just sitting there going, I invested the crazy amount of points in these things and I have nothing to gain from them. And then the Locust Destroyers are over here going, we don't care, we're killing everything.
Yeah,
because they've got an amazing weapon profile as well. It almost feels like they're a little newer of a model that was for 9th edition. I think they may have been, and it shows. Whereas some other stuff, they're like, you know what? Let's get you to buy these new things.
They just have a lot of units too.
Yeah, well, we've been around since 3rd edition, maybe, or let me know in the comments below which edition was it the Necrons started. So Locust Destroyers, you can run 3 options here. You can do the Gauss Destructors. Oh, sorry, no. That's only for the Locust Heavy Destroyer that's hidden in here. So they either get Anemic Exterminators or Gauss Cannons. These Top Guns are terrible. The 3D3s I love to see, right? It's awesome. -1 AP, 1 damage, blast. I mean, this is a lot of shots. This is where you want your shots, though. 3 shots guaranteed. 6 strength, so a little bit less strength on the other guns, -3 AP, so you're going to penetrate more than likely or do pretty well against saves, D3 damage. It's only 1 damage to 3, but it's random, but it also means you can go up against heavier targets and actually delete things that are 2 wounds, potentially. And that's the benefit. Therein lies the real benefit, right? I take these Gauss Cannons all the time. The one also unfortunate thing is they're only 24 inches. So
that's like a lot of my factions, just 24 inches.
Yeah. Well, honestly, what I might do is when I get these fully all upgraded or built and made, once I get them all, I may take 1 or 2 with these guns.
Right.
And then the rest with this and 1 Locust Heavy Destroyer hidden. So that way I have 3 different profiles to choose to go different ways for damage, because these are perfect gun for smaller, not necessarily vehicles, but like bikes. because they're one more strength than most bikes, toughness, so then they can penetrate way easier and get through the damage. And then, so how many points are your Hearthkin bikes or whatever?
Oh man.
Or how many wounds? Sorry.
Three wounds.
3 wounds. So they have a potential to kill them in one shot or take multiples. And these are like the perfect, except for against Votann, anti-infantry weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get through saves and get lots of shots, because there's potential for only 3 shots. That's the other negative here, but it's 12 inches more. 3 shots to 9 shots. So you could have 9 shots. And if you packed a full 6 of these, all of this guy, that's potential for a lot.
Yeah.
But it's only a potential. So I think overall Games Workshop needs to be really careful about their damage stuff. They may need to do something with vehicles to make them a little bit more safer from, especially if you're going to introduce things like Magna Rail going, we just penetrate everything, you can't take invuln saves, you can't do anything. Kind of feels like you're just sitting there going, well, I'm dead. I took damage. And I'm glad for people having saves, but also having played you against Custodes.
Yeah, I think that's another thing too. Is like the only time you played me is there's just crazy like armor.
Yeah, you have a lot of armor on a lot of stuff, and
which I like
that's all right.
Aesthetic. I don't know. I think they should double down with that, and like I'm fine if they jack up the points on like warriors and stuff like that, and then they just buff the saves and stuff. I think that would make sense for them.
Yeah,
I think that'd be the route to go. Maybe give them an extra strength on some kind of weapon or something, but I think that'd be the way to go.
Right. It'll be an interesting thing to see what they do to the Votann this next data slate, and it's already January, so that's coming up in 2 weeks.
Maybe. The 14th. It's like a week. What's the day? The second.
This is the second. We got 2 weeks. We're gonna be close, and then everything changes. I'm still crossing my fingers for some like -1 point for Necron Warriors, just cause. But I know that's terrible of me. Just them, everything losing Armor of Contempt, even if their points drop, mean my Necron Warriors and my Immortals all of a sudden become useful. Like more so, again. Yeah. Just instantly out of the gate because of less damage or less AP needed to get through stuff. They may have an extra...
Custodes are getting crazy again too with that. I mean, they already had a lot of AP, but like it's almost... There's sometimes where like with Grey Knights, they could just skate out of there and get some kind of save, which is like, getting a save versus not getting a save is two different
and we
things.
Still need to see that with your Custodes versus Grey Knights, because the one thing that Grey Knights, you've talked a little bit about the mortal wound stuff with like Nightbringer. The fact that the stupid, oh goodness, Grey Knight stuff, everything's a psychic almost.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you can just go mortal wounds, mortal wounds, mortal wounds, mortal wounds. Necrons can't actually bring stuff back from that. They can't save from it. There's nothing they can do. A lot of Votann stuff really can't unless you take certain traits or abilities or certain characters.
There's some characters that are like worded to where if they're gonna lose a wound period, then they gotta make a save. But the vast majority of my army gets clapped by mortal wounds, which I think is a lot of people.
I mean, that's the in general thing of mortal wounds. But whenever you have every character in your like every unit can psychic, so even if there's only one model left in the unit, they can still psychic as though they're a full squad of 10. Bizarre to me.
Yeah.
And so they can just go, you know what? No, we're doing this, and it's this much. And
I think they could make something where it's like if the unit is under strength or something from starting, it's like -1 to your warp charge or whatever.
Yeah.
Warp rolls. I think something.
Exactly that. And I mean, granted, as you use Smite, it gets harder and harder to use, but there's other things I think with like Grey Knights that they can do. And, for you, could you take more of him? Is he an elite or an HQ?
He's an HQ. I don't think you... I'm trying to remember the rules. I think they're like Custodes where you can only have one of everything.
Yeah, we may have to
look. But if this is a new... I'd have to look.
Well, he's a generic, isn't he? Or is he a named character?
No, he's an HQ, but I think they've got something in there that says you can't have more than one of like a call or champion.
Weird. And that... I wish they would do away with some of the mortal wounds, but honestly, like Magna Rail, it's just mortal wounds. Whenever you have all those things that it can bypass, it's mortal wounds that can even go to other models. Oh wait, that's mortal wounds, because a mortal wound is something deals 3 mortal wounds.
I get what you're saying, but that's circumstantial too. And I think
it is
just saying that just because we just played it like that, but like you also saw where like you get a judgment token on it, and then like obviously you're hitting better, but then you can't do that against some people.
Yeah.
Because it's already a 3 up to hit, and then if you have a judgment token on them and roll a 6 like I did, like I shouldn't put that on it, but I rolled a 6 and then I shot into that Immortals and I did 8 damage to one guy and like eradicated him.
Yeah, he deleted and then he came back next turn because
But that's what I'm saying. Like that is like ability was circumstantial, and I only got to use it twice before the thing got shut down.
Yeah,
and
that was
the 2 times I used it, the guy just came back anyways. Like
that was it's specific to my faction though too, because I had a character nearby. You just couldn't see other things to shoot them, and so you got to shoot into an immortal, killed 1, so it didn't do jack diddly squat because it's only a squad of 5, and then I brought him right back because I had a technomancer next to him.
The point I'm trying to make is that's like I understand.
That gun's not for that.
Favorable to play against that, but at the same time, it's not like guarantee that anything's going to happen. Like if anything in this game is going to be hard to balance because it's a statistics game. So it's like there's an opportunity to do that, but there's also like a lot of steps to get there, and it's a really expensive. It's what, $460.
Well, let's for a second here. You shot that gun for 2 reasons at my Immortals.
Because I just wanted to wipe infantry off the board.
Yeah, you had a hope, but it was a random hope because your guy was teleported over to the other side. If he had stayed over there, you could have actually used him to guarantee it, basically, and done a 1-turn wipe.
What are you talking about?
So if your leader guy hadn't teleported over first turn with your bikes, he could have been next to your vehicle.
He was next to the vehicle. This guy, no, the Unthar. This is a different guy. This is Unthar. This is the Ein champion. But he doesn't give that ability.
No. But the one that gave the ability was the one that you ran back to the vehicle, correct?
No, Unthar's got that ability.
To help you get to an auto 6?
Yeah, once per battle round.
Which one was that though that teleported with the bikes?
This guy teleports.
He's the one that gives the 6.
No. Unthar gives the 6.
So why didn't you use the 6?
I did use the 6. I can't use it though because if the judgment token hit on a 6.
Oh, the judgment token.
There's a 1 judgment token and then there's a 6 on it.
That's why it didn't work.
And that's right. And then I couldn't.
So you could have technically that turn if you hadn't put the judgment token on. Because I wiped that squad instantly.
I had to spend a CP to go ahead and re-roll it, and then I got the 6, and then I forgot I had another. Well, I couldn't re-roll it anyways again.
That's true.
Even if I.
But you'd already put a judgment token on because you could see them, and you decided to put it on them.
Yeah, because I thought, what are the odds I'm going to get a 6, and then I got a 6, and that was just my fault. So I went from being able to wipe that entire thing off the board with like no return policy.
So it wasn't actually the damage profile that was the issue. It was just a misplay in that moment of the odds shouldn't have happened.
Right.
And then they did.
Should have put it on the little guys.
Yeah. So, normally that type of a gun shouldn't go into Immortals, but with that setup, you could delete 5 Immortals guaranteed, which doesn't sound very useful for its damage, but it means they can't resurrect, because once they all die, they're gone. You cannot bring them back. Because I had them in groups of 5 just to take objectives, and then it just happened that you'd put a judgment token on, causing the 6.
Funnily enough, too, there was that squad that killed that got the Lane Fortress down. That's why they got that judgment token at the end, because they killed it.
No, that was because I'd forgotten to fire with my Overlord.
Well, they did damage. Sorry.
Yeah, they damaged it at some point, I think. They plinked it. But then the Overlord was the one that finished it off because I'd forgotten about him, and I was like, I can't fire with him, and then realized he has 21 inches, measured it, went, holy cow, got lucky with one shot finally going through because you were saving out of a ton of them because a lot of the mortal wounds had gotten you down really low. Because I just wanted it to blow up.
If one of those 6s had been like anything else, I would have survived that entire round. You know what's funny is that they have a stratagem where you can, for a turn, you can use its abilities like it's at full health.
Yes. Yeah,
Which was-
Necrons have that too for vehicles.
I
And
think
it's
like
like,
custodians even. I think a lot of factions have stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is odd,
well,
but
and that's really frustrating to me is like, I could do that. So say if I did that to a Doomsday Arc, you'd still have to deal with the weapon profile issue.
yeah.
You just get your stats back to a 3+, but meh. For
Yeah.
you, it's good. Like the Doom Scythe is actually really good if you can keep it survivable for a turn, so then you could bump
Yeah.
it back up. I think on the bigger maps that we've been playing, the Doom Scythe actually
Might be. Well, especially now that, well,
it would perform better as long as you can't shoot it turn 1.
right. Well, with the new rules, I don't know. I mean,
That's true.
every match is different because if I push up a certain way, you got to place it a certain way. Like I could obviously still hit it, but what does that mean though? Does that mean you can still like attack turn 1, or does that mean you're coming out of strategic reserve, so you're just on the board?
I think it comes out in turn 2.
That's what I'm saying. Like turn 2.
Yeah. Turn 2, you can start shooting and doing everything. So
Okay.
you spawn it in turn 2 and then start shooting and stuff, which guarantees it can at least shoot once before it dies for any aircraft. So that's good, but you also have to wait a turn to use them. So then that's one less turn of any firepower that you could have access to.
Yeah.
And that's devastating because that's a massive blow to damage, ironically. But it also could let it survive. So then that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get to come in on your turn, and everything's probably gonna. It's like 36 inches.
Yeah, 36. If you're Nephrit, 39.
Right. So 39 on round 2 is going to be targeting pretty much everything.
Yeah. Because I think you just have to be not within 9 inches of somebody, so you can just place it anywhere. I'm guessing.
Well, anywhere in your deployment zone.
Is it strategic reserves? I'm not sure on that one.
If it's strategic reserves, it's got to be deployment zone because that would make no sense. That'd be teleporting if you could just place it anywhere.
Gotcha. So I think this is a good spot to conclude. I think they just need to be really careful about damage because some of the profiles just keep getting a little bit better. And pretty soon we're going to have an insanity of a game that's just unfun for one group or another. And then they're going to have to nerf something into the floor like they keep doing apparently because of Tyranids and Harlequins and other things. And like Votan got nerfed before they even came out because...
Well,
they were...
I don't know if... obviously it's a nerf, but it was like more common sense than anything because the fact that you could roll... It was the judgment tokens would count towards an unmodified wound roll of 6 or whatever, or an auto hit. So it's like that was dumb. Yeah,
and that's the reality of like, did they really play test it? Apparently not. If they were sending it out and then went, we should change that because that seems sketchy. So let us know down in the comments below what you think about damage in Warhammer 40k. Is it right? Is it balanced? Is it fair? Obviously, nothing can ever be truly full on balance because that would be so hard to do, especially with such a massive game.
It's a statistics game. You can't.
Oh yeah, and statistics, like that's the reality, and that's why I would totally go with like. Do you agree with my thought on maybe it should be 2d3s instead of just d6s on stuff because d6s are just so random and so open. Like, would that help it? Because then statistics will change with the chance there and give you more opportunities and a little bit less one attacks.
I think it's just getting it to the point where you finish a game and you're like, I just rolled bad. I think that's where they need to get to.
Yeah. Well, and that was the reality. You activated a thing that made all my 1s through 3s not count as hits. And then when I rolled, it was over 50% of them weren't hits.
Right.
And that was devastating.
Well, and the funny thing is a lot of factions have for custodians it's like genetic alchemy or something, and then Space Marines it's transhuman. There's a lot of like just 1 through 3s.
Yeah, so let us know down in the comments below what you think about all this stuff. I've been Cody and this has been John from the Keepers of Nerddom. Thank you all and take care. Bye.